Originally, this video was going to be speculating about the Godzilla vs. Marvel miniseries, but when I was halfway through writing the script, they revealed what some of the other issues were going to be about, as well as 15 Godzilla-themed variant covers in other heroes' comics. So today, I'm going to break down all of the variant covers and tell you if they contain anything that could be important to the series, before making my predictions for each of the 6 issues, and explain why Godzilla is fighting Galactus of all people, and why Spider-Man is back in his black suit. Enjoy! So, we'll be going through these in no particular order, starting with Daredevil, Miles Morales, Scarlet Witch, and Spider-Gwen. Now, the reason as to why I singled these out is because they, like many of the variants we'll be seeing today, use a non-specific Godzilla, resembling the Heisei Goji. Unlike the other variants, these do not really contain anything of note, besides Daredevil's, as the art style is very similar to the Spider-Man issue and especially the Godzilla design, so we might see him appear in that. The Wolverine variant is especially funny, with him trying to tackle Godzilla head-on and only his adamantine skeleton surviving. Moon Knight's variant has a massive Egyptian kaiju, which I believe is Khonshu, but I don't know that much about Moon Knight's lore, so I could be wrong. The Venom variant is by far my favourite, as the Venomized Godzilla is something I didn't know I needed in my life until now. I also think that it's hilarious how they now have a chance to reference both of these memes at once. Dazzler is our first variant to feature a distinct version of Godzilla, in the form of Godzilla Ultima from Singular Point. Now, I don't think that we'll see any heroes fighting this version in the miniseries for reasons I'll discuss later, but he's a nice surprise. The first Avengers variant contains a massive Iron Mech fighting Godzilla, but a closer look reveals that it's from the Showa era. But even better than that, look at the spikes on the mech's knuckles. And look at his curved head spike thing. And if it's not obvious already, look at those spiky kneecaps and joints, as well as the nuts and bolts surrounding the grey metal parts of him. Yes, this is a kaiju-sized hulkbuster made out of the original Mechagodzilla. The Godzilla in this is even the same one from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and I really hope that this gets included. Thor's variant seems to be fighting Godzilla in Asgard, and now that I think about it, fighting a character like Godzilla actually makes a lot of sense for Thor. The X-Men variant is also really cool, with both Godzilla and Cyclops firing their face lasers at an off-panel opponent, which I have a sneaking suspicion that I know who that might be. The Deadpool variant seems to confirm my prediction that one of the heroes would fight MonsterVerse Godzilla, which I had my doubts about considering that Warner Bros. Owns DC and they already had a crossover with MonsterVerse Godzilla. But even better than that is Shin Godzilla fighting the Avengers. When writing the first script, we only knew 5 of the 6 heroes or teams that would be fighting the Godzillas, and I knew that the last one had to be the Avengers, and I thought that the only Godzilla from the last 20 years to give them a run for their money was Shin Godzilla. Now before we look at this series issue by issue, let me tell you about what predictions I made. In a promotional banner, there was a tagline that said, "Godzilla takes on Marvel across the eras." I took this to be a hint that we will be seeing not just one Godzilla. Let me explain further. Unlike Godzilla vs. Kong vs. Justice League, which was one overarching story with each issue picking up where the previous one ended, this would be 6 different stories with different Godzillas. As well as that, it wouldn't be about just one version of Godzilla, it would involve a different Godzilla each issue, like Zilla, Showa, Heisei, MonsterVerse, Millennium, etc. And for the most part, I was right. Let's take a closer look. When the first issue was announced and we got our first look at the cover art, I researched everything that we had been given about this issue, so here's all that I know. In it, Galactus is going to kick out the Silver Surfer in favour of a new herald, King Ghidorah. So, the Fantastic Four and Godzilla will be teaming up to stop them. I didn't think that we'd get any issues based on Godzilla 1954, as there's a lot of evidence that we're kicking things off in the 60s. Firstly, the Fantastic Four were the most popular heroes of the 60s. Secondly, we're getting a new movie about the Fantastic Four, which is based in that era. Thirdly, King Ghidorah's first appearance was in 1964, 10 years after the first Godzilla movie. And finally, the Fantastic Four didn't exist in either 1954 or 1955, so it wouldn't make any sense in the timeline. Hey there, editor Godzilla Smash here. I accidentally wrote the script 3 different times. The first time was before we got the variants, and the others were because I accidentally gave 2 scripts the same name, so I had to Frankenstein the best parts of them together for this video. Long story short, I missed some points. Another piece of evidence was this variant mimicking wrestling posters, which contains a version of Godzilla resembling the 1964 design, and the Fantastic Four variant recently revealed has that version of Godzilla and the 60s version of the Fantastic Four. But here's the thing. His forehead is reminiscent of his original Jack Kirby design. You're welcome. Again, I think that the way the series is introducing Godzilla into Marvel will be like different versions of him popping up and interacting with a few heroes before disappearing. They might even make most of the movies canon, and at the very least I'd expect at least a couple of references to an earlier Godzilla appearing 10 years ago. Hulk vs. Godzilla doesn't take place in the Monsterverse as I previously thought, but instead the 70s. Now I only know this due to one of the covers, as the other cover doesn't have a clear Godzilla design, and the Hulk variant features Godzilla 1954. I thought that if they were going to do any movies from the 70s, it would be Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, but no, we're seeing Jet Jaguar in this issue, so it must be based upon Godzilla vs. Megalon. And I am prepared to be disappointed by this issue, because I know full well that they won't do the dropkick. I'm already on the 5th stage of grief, acceptance. My other exaggerations besides, I'm really excited for this because the stylized artwork looks incredible. And I'd be surprised if the battle hasn't already happened as it's a perfect match. And now, we're on to what is probably my most anticipated comic of 2025, Godzilla vs. Spider-Man. Now, one of, if not my favourite comic book villain is Venom. I just find his design so creepy and goofy at the same time. And probably my favourite Godzilla design is Godzilla 84, and yes, I did it. I got him. So to see a beautifully drawn Heisei Goji chasing down a black suit Spider-Man is something that I thought could only exist in fan service heaven. But the logic behind this is so obvious that I'm baffled that I didn't manage to predict it. So my original prediction was Spider-Man fighting Zilla, as I knew that they were going to do 1984 and Zilla is the only Godzilla I could imagine Spider-Man putting up a fight against. But by having him wear the black suit, he's more on par with Heisei Godzilla. And wouldn't you know it, but he first got the symbiote in Secret Wars, the biggest comic event of 1984. And while it would be fantastic...
Say that again?
I strongly doubt that we'd see Venomized Godzilla. At this point in the timeline, Spider-Man hasn't rejected him, and the symbiote didn't have the eyes, teeth, or tongue. I didn't have a vendetta against Spider-Man. Also, it might be an eensy-weensy bit unfair to take away Spidey's main advantage. Okay, so that's all of the issues that we've seen as of recording, but I wouldn't be surprised if they reveal more shortly after this video releases, so I'll probably make a short to discuss them. I'm really proud of my prediction for the 2000s, as I believe that it would be Godzilla and the X-Men fighting Mechagodzilla. Our reasoning behind this is, I didn't think that we'd get a Godzilla from the 70s, so the original Mechagodzilla wouldn't be included, which, in a roundabout way, still applies. I thought that they would do Zilla for the 90s or Burning Godzilla, so no Heisei Mechagodzilla. But the Kiryu Mechagodzilla is not only the most popular and recognizable, but the competition is either too random or too massive to make for a good issue. And look at the Godzilla in the X-Men variant. He's got the same style dorsal plates and the same neck design as the Godzilla from that era. But surprisingly, it's not the Godzilla that confirms this theory, it's the X-Men. When I originally predicted this, we didn't have the variant cover, so they're already the most accurate prediction in this entire video. And the reason why I chose this team and this movie is because this Mechagodzilla is subject to mind control multiple times in the movie. Now if only there was a Marvel villain who could control the very materials Kiryu is made out of. That's right. I believe that Magneto is going to control Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla and the X-Men will team up to stop them. For the 2010s, it depended on whether or not Warner Brothers would let Toho use Monsterverse Godzilla. I mean, they legally aren't allowed to release a movie in the same year as them, so why would they be allowed to use the character without their supervision? Also, Justice League vs. Godzilla vs. Kong 2 is reportedly going to release this year, which, as well as proving that Warner Brothers hasn't got any better at not convoluting names since the original Birds of Prey, might have also meant that they didn't want any competition. If they didn't allow it, I would assume that Hulk would appear in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla from the 70s instead, but now it looks like we're getting both the 70s and the Monsterverse, and instead not having the 90s. So I now predict that Thor will fight Monsterverse Godzilla, which is a safe bet. And that's pretty much it. To simplify things, here's my full prediction for the series. Fantastic Four vs. Godzilla will take place in 1964 and will feature Godzilla from Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Hulk vs. Godzilla will take place in 1973 and will be based on Godzilla vs. Megalon. Spider-Man vs. Godzilla will take place in 1984 and will be based on Return of Godzilla. There will be no issue for the 90s. X-Men vs. Godzilla will take place in 2002 and will be based upon Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. Thor vs. Godzilla will take place at pretty much any time between 2014 and 2025 and will be based on the Monsterverse. Final issue will be the Avengers vs. Godzilla, which will take place in 2016 and be based on Shin Godzilla. But anyways, that's it for this video. I won't be making a follow-up video about this when we get more information, but instead, after the full series is out, I'll be doing a retrospective on whether Godzilla vs. Marvel or Godzilla vs. DC was better, and that will also include a small update where I see how many of my predictions came true. I'll also be reviewing the issues individually in a short or a smaller form of video that I'm thinking of trying out that will focus on updates about Godzilla. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all later.